All right. Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Conversations with Curio, where we get curious about important and today very interesting financial topics. And today we're really excited to have a very unique guest on the show. I'm joined by Valerie Falish, who is the proud owner of Going Places Travel, which is a concierge travel and vacation planning agency. Valerie, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hi, yes, thanks so much for having me. Thanks for introducing me. Like you said, I own a travel agency located in Franklin, North Carolina, but service clients all over the country. And like you said, boutique luxury travel is what I focus on.
Boutique luxury travel, which is a niche, I would imagine,
Yeah,
in the travel world. Yeah.
right. I sell all types of travel, but I've found that that's where my clients need the most, hands-on assistance. There's a lot of planning involved, so that's where I found the highest need.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to get started, I'm really curious. This is your agency. And it's funny because when we were in touch about scheduling our conversation today, you said you were headed out of the country for a couple of weeks. So go figure, travel is probably
Right.
pretty important to you. But what inspired you to start your agency? Kind of tell us a bit
Yeah.
about the story behind Going Places.
Right. So I actually have a unique start than most people that have either are travel agents or own a travel agency because I purchased my agency from the previous owner, who was actually my aunt. So she owned the business for about 20 years prior to me coming on. And I had a background in education. I was in administration. I was training teachers, looking to become a vice principal, actually. And it was just kind of divine intervention where I realized that wasn't my path anymore. I was ready to move on. And a lot of the skill sets that I used in teaching kind of translated time management, organizing, working up proposals like lesson plans, things like that. So a lot of the skills, I'm also passionate about travel. I did a lot of travel within my teaching and undergrad. So has always been something I've loved and also feel confident in because of my experience and my skill set. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting that, your the skills that you really developed and built on, in your years in education, it sounds like. I mean, it translated really well into something that is not only something that you're personally interested in, but there's a family legacy to there as
Right.
well.
Right. And she did a great job of, building up that great reputation in the community. She's already built that great name, that great customer service. So it's been great continuing on and carrying on that legacy. But then, of course, putting my own spin on it, figuring out what I'm good at or what my interests are that can add to the company. So I've been in this role about 3 years now. So.
Okay. And organization was one of the first skills that you mentioned. You know, in terms of your work with folks, I mean, what's the biggest pain point that folks have in terms of travel planning that when they come to you, what are they really kind of struggling with and dealing with that leads them to you?
Yeah, a lot of the times it's either just overwhelmed because there's a lot of information out there now, and you can find a lot and do a lot of your own on your own. But it's
Mhm.
almost so much that it's overwhelming to sift through and to understand, what's fact versus fiction, what's an opinion versus hard evidence. So that a lot of times leads them to an expert, right? I have
Yeah.
those facts, I have those connections. If I haven't been somewhere, I spend a lot of my time attending webinars and conferences to make those in-person connection. So I have those people to reach out to for the places I haven't been or maybe haven't sold as much. So
Yeah.
a lot of it is just the expertise. And then, my clients that have worked with me now know what I can get them, what the experience is working with an agent. Again, I really focus on my relationships in the industry. And with that comes a lot of perks and advantages. Like if a hotel or a tour operator knows my clients are coming because of that
Mhm.
relationship I built, they get treated really well. They get upgrades, they get breakfast thrown in.
Yeah.
So a lot of that too is, why people return or repeat or recommend.
Yeah, it's really there's a lot of overlap there, I think, between the work that we do with clients and the work that you do with your clients. I mean, it's to some extent tuning helping folks to tune out the noise. I mean, there's so
Right.
much out there, and especially probably on the travel front, you're inundated with images and pictures. Is it too good to be true? Well, maybe, and you would know since you're an expert in the field and in it
Yeah.
every day, so you can really help them to sift through what's real and what's not.
And that's also why the relationship is so important. So my clients that I've worked with for years and years or have serviced their families' trips as well, I know them really well. I know how the style that they like to travel, their interests. So I
Hmm.
can also help them match their interest to a destination. Like, for
Yeah.
example, a lot of people say, this is what I want, and this is the experience I want to have on vacation, and this is where I want to go. But those don't always match up. And it's social media, it's movies that make us
Yeah.
think that. And I say, well, that destination doesn't have all inclusives and that's what you want.
Yeah.
Or that destination doesn't have anything to explore. You'd really just be laying on the beach and your family wants to do all these adventures. So let's
Yeah.
rework your idea and see how we can get it to those things to match up. There's so many destinations in the world. So that's a reason too, is kind of
Yeah.
qualifying them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's so important. I mean, to actually go through the process of, what are you interested in? What is it that you want to do? And then lining that up with, okay, here are some great options that kind of fit what you're looking for right now. And I mean, it's kind of like maybe going to the grocery store. I mean, you're looking for, you just go in, you need a bottle of ketchup for, your kids need some ketchup or something, and you go in, there's 50 different kinds of ketchup.
Right.
Which one do you
Right.
pick? I just need bottle of
I know.
ketchup, but yeah, it can
That's
be
the fun part
really
of my
overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a fun part of my job because sometimes I gear clients towards making a budget friendly choice. Like, hey, this isn't a
Yeah,
place to splurge. Don't do the skip the line here because there is no lines. That's a gimmick. And then,
yeah,
you can kind of help them decide where to upgrade or where to save. So that's kind of the fun, creative part that I get to do. And then, the clients are always happy when you can suggest something that either saves money in their pocket or gives them an exclusive experience that they couldn't get otherwise. So it's
yeah.
definitely fun.
So that triggered a thought, and it's the term travel hacking. And I know you come across that all the time. Okay, so what is travel hacking, and is
Yeah.
it something that you can really do on your own, or do you really need somebody to help you hack travel?
Right. Yeah. I think that's probably a word that has multiple interpretations, but from
Yeah.
what I know is it's like monitoring travel, taking advantage of like shoulder seasons and,
Mm-hmm.
off times when other people might not have the availability or something, maybe not as a risk of a hurricane season.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have so many apps now where you can like, if there's a flight you're interested in, it can notify you when it's the best
Yeah.
rate, and then also just taking advantage of like loyalty points or credit card points and using those really advantageously towards travel because you can use points in a dumb way and then you can use them in a smart way because of the like
Yeah.
ratio when you transfer them.
Yeah.
So I will say it's a lot of work. So
That's
um,
just what I was thinking. It just sounds like what you're describing sounds like an incredible amount of work. I know. I mean, I definitely don't have time to travel hack because that just sounds like an inordinate amount of time
right.
to be spending.
Yeah, and a lot of times you have to be very flexible. So it's like, if you're trying to plan a group trip with friends or you have work to work around, it's not going to,
Mhm.
work that way. So it's meant more for people that have flexibility in their job or are retired and can kind of just hop on things, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, right. My phone. I don't want my phone giving me 50 notifications about cheap flights, maybe to destinations that I don't even really want to go to.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I'd
Yeah,
like to
and you get
delegate that.
inundated with all of that, right? But I
Yeah,
always try to, travel hack the best I can with my clients too. So
for
let's
sure.
say we're trying to book an Italy trip. There's several ways that I can put that together. There's several, suppliers or destination management consultants I can go through.
Mhm.
So depending on what all they want to book with me, I will, sort through that and find out what's going to be the best, get them the best deal for what they're packaging together.
Yeah. Do you find that folks that you're working with have maybe some fear and anxiety, or I mean, okay, planning the Italy trip, is that example. Like, never been to Italy, don't really know where to go, and if I do it myself, maybe I'm going to end up somewhere. Number one, it could just not be great, or number two, I might not feel safe. It might not be the best location. I mean, you find that folks have kind of fear and anxiety, and they look to you to.
Percent. Yeah, especially for
Yeah.
those destinations like Italy or places in Europe where there's a lot of logistics involved. You're on
Mm,
trains, you need private transfers, you need tickets, you need flights package. So
yeah.
yes, definitely. That's another reason why people come to me, the overwhelm, I'm not sure I'm making the best decisions. I'm going to Italy. This is a bucket list trip. I don't
Yeah.
want to go to Italy and then, had missed the coast or missed Rome. So definitely. And
Yeah.
that's one of the favorite parts of my job is kind of easing people through that. And they can be as involved or as uninvolved as they want. Some people just want to give me their credit card and say, send me the documents, tell me where to be. Some
Yeah.
people want to handpick every, let's talk
Okay.
about day one in Santorini. What are my
Yeah.
excursions going to be? So, and that's exciting too, because the clients can kind of choose if they have the time and they want to be involved,
Yeah.
great. If not, I can do it all for them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So you're flexible. I mean, you're kind of there to meet your clients where they are and what they're looking for.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if it ever is not a fit for some reason, I let them know. Like
Yeah.
certain things, like, if people want like a mountain cabin in a state in the US, sometimes
Yeah.
I don't have the best inventory for that. And I'll just let a client know you're going to have better access here booking this on your own, but please keep me in mind for the next trip. Cause
Yeah.
I'm always looking for the best situation for my clients, not always, what I'm getting out of it, because it's all about that relationship, that building
Yeah.
trust. So that's what's important to me.
Yeah. I do want them to have the experience that they're looking for.
Right. Travel's not cheap. These is like, probably besides, your home costs, some of the most expensive things, the biggest life memories. So yeah, that's the most important thing, is making sure that's maximized for my clients always.
That's such a terrific point. I mean, you think about, the large expenses that most people, not everybody, and then travel's not, on the top of the list for everybody, but for a lot of folks it is. And it's, but you think about the large expenses that, a lot of people encounter in their financial lives. Obviously, maybe a house, cars, maybe if you're doing college tuition, but travel and experiences and making memories, those undoubtedly are high on the list of major life expenses.
Right. And I really feel like now, I mean, I think that's one thing good that's come out of COVID, is that's been so prioritized. People
Hmm.
really have been investing and seeing the value in that and making memories over experiences. So many of my clients are doing like family Christmas trips instead
Yeah.
of gifts, or, couples that'll be like their gift towards each other. And I just think that's awesome. What better way to, than spend time together doing something that you're not doing in your day-to-day life. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's really why we're talking today, because I mean, in our practice, the clients that we're working with, I mean, these are major expenses. And, if there is that sense of overwhelm, or if there is that fear and anxiety, we want certainly folks to be spending confidently on major expenses and making the decisions that they can really be comfortable with. And of course, there's the planning component, which I'd be curious to get your feedback as well on kind of some of the planning aspects financially, when it comes to, these major travel expenses. And one question, that I had, in terms of kind of preparing financially for, a large travel expense, what mistakes do you kind of tend to see folks making when
right.
they're
Yeah.
spending money on travel?
Sure. Yeah. So one big one that comes to mind when you say that is, a lot of the times when I first have a conversation with clients and we talk about what they want to spend, they'll have a number in mind. Sometimes people already have a number if it's a honeymoon or something they've set aside for.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of their all in spend. They're not going to spend more than that. And that's what we're working with. But then as we get into it, as we get closer, they're like, well, I want to add that tour. I can't go without that. So once we're like about to go on the trip, we're over the budget we would have spent. And then
Yeah.
they didn't take advantage of those early bird pricing, or the more you package together, the better rates the suppliers
Okay.
can give. So I
Uh-huh.
always just try to tell clients, try to get the full picture of what you want to do, especially for the bigger trips like, Italy or Maldives or something, a bucket list, so that
Yeah.
you can be a realistic up front and get those, best deals.
That's real.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, good.
That was it pretty much. Yeah.
Well, one thing that you mentioned, a couple times is, suppliers, these experiences, and I don't. That's not necessarily a term I think I've come across too often, but it makes total sense. I mean, when you're traveling, and you're going to a destination, you certainly, unless it's just a remote wilderness, you expect there to be amenities and services there. I mean, there are suppliers for those things that you need when you're traveling to have those experiences. And, the rates that, what it costs will kind of ebb and flow. And you could be in that planning process and miss out on, right, kind of staying in touch with what those suppliers have on offer.
Yeah. And I think that really just goes back to having a very detailed conversation with an expert, with a travel agent, so they can help you see that bigger picture and understand what value or dollar sign to put on things. Of course, it's all estimated, but you can get a
Yeah.
general consensus and something to work with, because, as you can do a desert safari in the Middle East for, $200 a person, and you can do it for $1,000 a person. So it's all about the quality, the level of, I guess, experience and tailoring that you want. So it's really about those conversations and being like understanding what you want before you dive in too much of the planning.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's kind of similar. I use the bad grocery store analogy again. I mean, it's like if you're going to go to the grocery store and drop, $200, do you want to fill up one basket or two? And
Right.
if you're going to take a trip and you're going to drop $10,000 or whatever it is, do you want to maximize your experience and make it really what you want, or are you okay winging it and kind of seeing what you get? And that's the planning process.
Right. And it's great with travel. There's so much flexibility. Like sometimes my clients, well, I like Italy as an example for this. They want to do Venice and Rome and the coast and Pompeii, and they try to shove too much in. And then
Mm,
afterwards, they're like, oh, it was too rushed. I didn't really get to fully immerse in. So a lot of that too is guiding clients to saying maybe we slow down a little bit and really fully immerse so you're not spending so much time traveling or the hustle and bustle. So I always try to find a solution. We can shorten nights. We can look at different times of the year. That's a big thing with
yeah.
travel too. Summer usually is like 2 to 3 times more than shoulder season. So if you're close
Yeah.
here, there's always like ways you can find solutions.
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of being attuned to that is what's important. And yeah, a little sidebar question, came to mind and it escaped me. If it comes back, I'll mention it.
Yeah.
But kind of sticking on the financial theme. I mean, in terms of kind of saving for travel, obviously for us again, for folks where travel is an important priority, it does require that planning in advance. For folks in retirement, it's a little bit different. We're monitoring how much is kind of coming out of their resources in their portfolio to fund their objectives. For those that are in that accumulation phase of their lives where they're kind of, we want to go travel, but we also want to save to buy a house. We've got kids. We want to save for their college. You're balancing these priorities. Are you finding anything, in your conversations with folks that, has really worked well in terms of saving for travel and kind of helping to create that as a priority within their budget?
Right, right. Yeah, really clients, I let them decide like I can be involved in that or not. So sometimes clients
Yeah.
have me involved in we do like payment plans on their trips. So they
Mhm.
feel more comfortable having me help monitor that and it comes out monthly so they can kind of put it in with those bills like you're talking about.
Yeah.
So with
Yeah.
that could be planning in enough advance. Because
Hmm.
if you book a trip 3 to 6 months out, you don't have it's going to be due in full closer.
Yeah.
But if you have that planning advance, you have more time to, make payments and spread it out. And then a lot of my clients will open a separate, savings account just for travel. So
Yeah.
that kind of helps you monitor your spending and just put it in there and, you know, not touch it until it's at a certain point. That can
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And then just setting goals. So meeting with your advisor and figuring out what that estimated amount is so that you know
Mhm.
what you're working with and chipping away at it slowly.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
it's interesting though because honestly, I mean, we've have our experiences. I mean, as advisors, we have we have personal lives and we travel, and so we have that frame of reference. We hear from our clients and what they've done. But to be honest, I mean, if client comes in and say, "How much does a trip to Europe cost?" Well, we can ballpark it. It's going to be on the high end, but we don't have that kind of really detailed sense of, okay, where do you want to go? To kind of dial in exactly how much this is going to cost.
right, right. And then, I mean, I take that as my responsibility because a lot of the times, I don't even always say, what's your budget? What do you have to spend? Because travel's always changing. Clients
Yeah.
sometimes feel uncomfortable with that question because they don't want to throw something too low. They don't want to.
Yeah.
So it's not that they don't have, they just don't know what that number would be that's realistic. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I take that as my job to stay up on the trends. What are things costing? Keep up with the different times of the season so I can at least give some general answers before clients are deciding if a destination can work for them. I consider that my job. That's what my expertise is. So I try to always, as you said, it is an estimate. Things are always changing, but
Hmm.
yeah, and that's why specialize. Like I could probably do that for Europe. Can't do that for everywhere in Asia because
Yeah.
only. But I have partners that can. So
Yeah.
that's how I solve that problem.
Right. Like you were saying earlier, I mean, you're in this every day and there's so much information out there. It's impossible for folks that aren't in it every day to really sift through it and understand, okay, what is this actually going to cost?
Yeah.
And so there's this whole planning process, right? I mean, identifying how much you can afford or how much you can save for this objective and then putting a plan in place for, hitting that objective. And too often I would say, it's, especially larger kind of life event types of trips, more expensive trips. I remember, I'll just give you a story. When I was a kid, we sat down as a family and we said, okay, where do we go? We want to plan a big trip. And we all decided Greece. I think I was too young to even really know, like, okay, but my parents, they printed off a picture of one of the Greek Isles.
Probably
And
sent you with the
probably,
white and blue.
yes. And taped it to the side of this yellow plastic jug. And that's where we put all our change. Um, and yeah, so we were all involved, but I'll say, I mean, we the trip never happened. The momentum we lost, and as a family, we were committed to it for a while, but again, that's where I think just this whole planning process is important. If it's important, you got to monitor that as a priority and really stick with it. And it can take a few years to prepare financially for a major trip.
Right. But I think it's always worth waiting rather than doing something and spending that money and not feeling like you did it right or did it justice. So
yeah. I still want to go to Greece.
You got to get there. I feel like a bucket list for everyone, especially these days. That's a hot destination now.
That's a high. So you know what's right. You know where people are going and where people aren't going and where the deals are. So let's kind of like shift gears a little bit to like things that can go wrong when you're traveling. And I think first off, kind of, dealing with emergencies abroad, whether financial emergency or a health related emergency. Is this something that you see pretty commonly as kind of in your planning? Are you planning for this, or do your folks that you're talking with have that as a concern and are planning around it? Kind of how are we dealing with that?
100%. Yes. So that's something that's always on the forefront of my client's mind. If you think about it, when you're traveling, that's when you're kind of out of your element. You're doing things you might not typically do. That's probably when things are going to happen and go wrong. So you always want to be prepared. So the biggest thing with that is travel insurance. I cannot stress that enough. Even if you're not interested in cancellation protection, you can get a really affordable medical insurance policy only. Talking like $20 to $40 affordable, depending on your age. And that covers you when you're abroad for, if you just need to go to the doctor because you got food poisoning, or if you slip out of the shower and break your femur and have to be airlifted home. I've had that happen to my clients.
It sounds like experiences that you have heard firsthand.
Yes, I have so many stories that as soon as I just get to talking, my clients are like, yes, get the travel insurance. And it's usually not even that expensive. Like I said, it's a, percentage of the trip that if you're already making that investment, life happens. Of course, people always say, oh, I'm not going to cancel. I'm going on this trip.
Yeah.
And then something, of course, out of their control happens. And then I've had them sign that I offer travel insurance and they didn't accept it. But usually my clients are purchasing that, prioritizing that. And then as far as being prepared for those emergencies when you're abroad, there's definitely some, little tips and things to know, like having copies of your passport on your phone and leaving copies at home. So in case if those documents get lost, it's literally so much easier to get new copies if you have that. So, taking multiple credit cards in case something happens and storing them in different locations. So I always give my clients like a guide all about where they're going. So if they're going to the United Kingdom, what do you need to know for this destination? So that's always something that's in there, how to prepare for those emergencies, what you should be bringing, what documentation to have at home, have with you.
So that's a really good one. Just having, somewhere a copy of your important document, your passport, to make it a lot easier if it gets lost or stolen. And then the travel insurance, is a really important component. I mean, you've got kind of the cancellation insurance, you've got medical insurance, which it really sounds very affordable, for what you're getting. And I mean, with risk management, I mean, we don't pay these things hoping that something's going to go wrong. And you don't pay these premiums, expecting to get your money back. You pay those premiums because if something bad happens, then you can have the peace of mind that, you have added layers of protection.
And there's various ways to shop insurance too. So, for example, if it's a cruise line, sometimes, depending on the client's age, it's more affordable to take out the cruise line insurance, and we'll review those comparisons. And then I can offer third-party insurance or outside, what are they called? Insurance agents.
Yeah.
And so we can look at it both ways. they also offer annual policies. So like, let's say you're retired and you do a lot of traveling, you could do an annual policy. That's a lot more affordable too. So there's definitely options there.
That's really interesting. Kind of an annual policy. If you're traveling a lot, you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about it every time.
Right. That's what I
So,
do,
yeah.
so
Yeah. You're traveling all the time. So,
yeah, I'm gone like
yeah.
probably a week, a month. So
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
stage in my life, that's what I can do. So probably won't be
Yeah.
able to keep up with that forever, but trying to get all the experience now.
Well, it's relevant to what you do every day into your business. So,
Oh, the amount that I
yeah.
learn when I'm in destination is insane. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on kind of currency? What have you been paying for when you're at your destination? What do you look for in terms of getting cash, and then in terms of making payments? We've come across a few situations in the past where folks have, say, for example, put a rental car abroad, put it on a credit card, and that's really kind of stepped in to help in a lot of ways in terms
Right.
of dealing with any incidents or accidents that could happen. What are your thoughts on kind of credit card and hard currency?
Yep, that was one of the main things I was going to say is you always want to be putting things on credit when you're traveling because of
Yeah.
that. Because if, charges don't match up or there was some fees that you didn't agree with, it's so much easier than, debit or real cash to get back. So always use a credit card as much as you can and make sure it has the tap on it, especially
Mm-hmm.
in Europe, but almost everywhere they want that tap feature on your
Tap.
card.
Yeah.
But I always do recommend traveling with at least a little bit of the local currency for
Mm-hmm.
emergent situations, maybe about 1 to 2 days worth of funds.
Okay.
And I usually recommend if you have time, the trip's planned ahead to get that from your local bank. It's maybe a tiny bit more expensive than in destination, but then you
Yeah.
already have it if you need it at the airport. You're not
Yeah.
spending time doing that while you're in destination. So I would recommend at least 1 to 2 days of expenses in the local currency and then bringing at least 2 cards that don't have foreign transaction fees and that offer the best travel perks. You're going to get a lot of
Yeah.
points and cash back and things on travel purchases because, like we said, it's big expenses too. So it's
Yeah.
another good reason to use your card.
So it sounds like, I mean, if you've got multiple cars and you're headed abroad, I mean, you should probably check in to see, what their charges are going to be
Yeah.
before you head out to know which card would be best to use.
Right. And then some credit cards, like, I have two that are specific for travel, but they actually offer a little bit of travel insurance. So rental
Mm-hmm.
car protection. So knowing what cards, of course, with the airlines too, like if you're purchasing direct with an airline using that specific credit card, you're going to get baggage included or
Mm-hmm.
so knowing how you can make your cards work for you too is important.
Yeah, that kind of comes back to the travel hacking a little bit in terms
I
of
help as much
rewards
as
and
I can, right? I help them my clients as much as I can with that because it's expensive. We keep as much in our pocket as we can, right? We're giving them enough of our money.
oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like you were saying earlier, I mean, you don't really know, like, what's this point worth, And
Exactly.
is it worth more here? Or if I somehow transfer and use it over here, is it worth more? So too much to know for most people.
I know.
Um, so I think just a couple more questions. I mean, one, I mean, that's interesting. You mentioned Greece is kind of a trending destination right now. Where else are you seeing is kind of trending right now? Are there any kind of future trends in travel that you see, on the horizon?
Yeah, as far as like destinations, definitely Italy and Greece are hottest in Europe right now.
Yeah.
Japan's really big in Asia right now.
Interesting.
Japan and
Yeah.
probably Thailand. And then a lot of interest in like New Zealand and more of like the expedition trips, like New
Oh
Zealand,
yeah.
Australia, Antarctica, even
Hmm.
Galapagos. So some of the, of course, that's not a first trip. These are for well seasoned travelers.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely those types of expedition trips. And then in the Caribbean, there's always like new hot destinations like St. Vincent and the Grenadines is popping up right
Hmm.
now. Antigua is on the trend, St. Lucia.
Hmm. Hmm.
So but yeah, it's also important to kind of try to get in before these destinations blow up. Like for example, Portugal
Yeah.
and Croatia. Those are
Yeah.
destinations where you can get really good rates still.
Okay.
Starting to get hot and figured out about, but I try to help clients with that too. Like, this is a similar experience, but you're going to get it at a lot better price. So,
Yeah, that's really. I mean, I think it's relevant. I mean, you think about spending a major life expense, and if you're maybe somewhat flexible on destination, you kind of have some ideas about what you want to do. Right. I mean, an established trending destination is probably gonna be more expensive than one that's maybe kind of more up and coming, and again, kind of filling up 2 carts instead of one. Maybe you want to consider this alternative. It's up and coming, but they have all the infrastructure in place and kind of all the amenities that you wanted at the other destination.
Right. Yeah. That's why when I try to like almost like interview my clients, those are the kind of questions I ask, not so focused on where do you want to go or is what you want to do, what's that experience, and then
Yeah.
can kind of help find what's going to be the best value. So, because a
Yeah.
lot of times, you know, like clients will have something in mind, for example, Turks and Caicos, because it has that clear water, but that's like 3 times some of the other destinations where you'll get the same thing in the Caribbean. So it's, like I said, kind of fun getting to hack that for clients too and letting them in on those little tips. And because, you know, people only know what they see on, you know, social media, TV.
Yeah.
Where do we get our inspiration for travel? From our friends, from movies. So I kind of have to rewrite that script of what is, what you said, realistic and what's reality. So, or
Yeah.
we see online.
And I've heard of, you know, certain destinations and resorts, you know, they might have pictures in their advertising that isn't actually a representation of what's there.
Yeah, they're like AI generated.
Right. So, well, one last question for you. This, I don't know, maybe easy, maybe hard. What's your most memorable, what's your most memorable travel experience?
My most memorable travel experience. Oh, that's so hard.
It could be a hard one.
I would say, yeah. So I would say it was recent, but I went on a desert experience in Dubai. I was kind of
Oh, wow.
mentioned it, but we got to see how the Bedouin culture lives. So the way that they cook the food like underground. So it was really immersive. It felt like you were like back in time. You know, they had the camels, we did like a safari, but anything where I can see landscapes or just culture that is so like out of touch with what I live day to day is so interesting to me. So Dubai in general was probably, you know, I'd never been to the Middle East. So just the whole culture shock and how different it was very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then otherwise than that, I would just say like the nature in Costa Rica. Like I've done some cool like thermal hot springs and just felt like so in tune with myself and nature. And those are really cool moments too, where you feel like a different person because of a trip or you come back refreshed and rejuvenated. So I'd say between those two.
I mean, those are real experiences, right? I mean, you're immersed there, and it's impacting you in different ways. And you know, these experiences, they stick with you. You make memories, and it's probably why it's so important to so many folks.
Exactly. Yeah, I love the quote. Like we're not supposed to, you know, live the same day over and over. So how can we, you know, step out of our day to day, do something new, get out of our comfort zone? Of course, it's not realistic all the time, but making that a priority because I feel like that's when you grow and learn the most about yourself and make those core memories that we're all searching for. So,
yeah. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for the time, the insights. This is really, I've learned a lot in just a short conversation. So really appreciate it. Going Places Travel. We'll have a link to your site and on the you know, in YouTube. So really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks so much for having me.